i.e. Kwei Armah's The Healers, 1978, is a historical novel set in 19th-century pre-colonial Ghana, during the period of Asante dominance and internal conflict. Blending fiction with history, Armah constructs a powerful narrative that interrogates the fragmentation of African societies in the face of colonial incursions, tribal divisions, and internal betrayals. The novel's title, The Healers, serves as a metaphor for those committed to restoring the physical, psychological, and political health of a broken Africa. It is a work deeply embedded in Pan-African thought, valorizing unity, traditional African knowledge systems, and resistance to colonial domination. The story is set during a time of immense upheaval in West Africa, particularly in the region ruled by the powerful Asante Empire. The Asante are facing both internal strife and external threats, including the encroaching British colonial presence. Within the empire, tribal rivalries, political corruption, and personal ambition are tearing communities apart. Against this chaotic backdrop, a group known as the Healers seeks to unify the people and resist imperial domination through wisdom, education, and the revival of African healing traditions. The novel follows Densu, a young man of royal lineage from the town of Eswano. After the suspicious death of his best friend, Ababio, Densu is wrongfully accused of murder. This event sets him on a path of exile and transformation. He flees Eswano and eventually becomes an apprentice to a group of healers led by Damfo, a sage-like figure dedicated to curing not only physical illness but also the socio-political sickness afflicting the land. As Densu trains with Damfo and the healers, he learns the principles of discipline, holistic medicine, and communal responsibility. He discovers that healing, in this context, is not just a medical practice but a political and spiritual mission aimed at uniting the fragmented African peoples. Meanwhile, the Asante kingdom is in turmoil. Chief Naba and other corrupt leaders manipulate traditional power structures for personal gain, selling their own people into slavery and collaborating with the British. The Healers, who advocate for African unity and independence, become targets of these reactionary forces. The novel builds towards a climactic confrontation between the Healers, embodying vision, morality, and unity, and the corrupt chiefs who symbolize division and betrayal. Densu, now matured, plays a key role in advancing the Healers' message, although their struggle is shown to be ongoing and unfinished. Character analysis. Densu. Densu is the novel's protagonist and the character through whom the reader experiences transformation. Initially naive and loyal to the traditions of his community, Densu's personal trauma and exile become catalysts for political awakening. His journey from passive observer to committed healer represents the ideal path Armah envisions for African youth. Learning from the past, embracing African values, and committing to the collective good. Damfo. Damfo is the central ideologue of the healer community. He is a teacher, physician, philosopher, and moral guide. Damfo embodies the Pan-African ideals of wisdom, unity, and resistance to oppression. He trains Densu not just in medicine but in ethics and the necessity of decolonizing African minds. Damfo's teachings critique both European imperialism and African complicity in their own subjugation. Chief Naba and the corrupt elite. These characters represent the internal enemies of African unity. They collaborate with the British, sell people into slavery, and exploit traditional authority structures for personal benefit. Armah portrays them as morally bankrupt and blinded by short-term greed, serving as cautionary figures in the African post-colonial landscape. Themes and analysis. 1. Healing as political metaphor. The novel's most central theme is that healing is not limited to curing physical ailments. It is about restoring wholeness to a fragmented society. The Healers aim to cure the sickness of tribalism, ignorance, and colonial subjugation. Armah uses the healer motif to symbolize African renewal, portraying traditional medicine and wisdom as essential tools for societal reconstruction. Dentsu's training emphasizes that healing involves balance between body and mind, individual and society, past and future. Armah thereby reclaims African indigenous knowledge as valid and vital in the fight against colonization and cultural erasure. 2. Pan-Africanism and unity. Tribal divisions are depicted as one of the key factors weakening African resistance. The healers promote unity across ethnic and cultural lines, believing that only a united Africa can resist foreign domination. This idea is echoed in the characters' rejection of narrow loyalties to tribe or chiefdom and their emphasis on broader continental solidarity. By placing this story in the 19th century, Armah shows that the seeds of Africa's political challenges were sown well before formal colonial rule. The emphasis on Pan-Africanism is both retrospective and prescriptive, offering lessons from the past for contemporary African politics. 3. Corruption and betrayal. One of the most scathing elements of the novel is its critique of the African elite. Chiefs like Naba are shown to be more dangerous than the British, for they betray their own people. Armah condemns those who manipulate traditions to legitimize power, expose their people to exploitation, and contribute to national decline. This critique is deeply resonant with post-independence African nations, where leaders often perpetuated colonial systems of exploitation. The novel urges a re-evaluation of authority and power, demanding moral leadership aligned with communal welfare. 4. Resistance to colonialism. Although the British presence is mostly in the background, their role is clear. They are opportunists who exploit African divisions for gain. The novel does not depict European colonizers as omnipotent conquerors, but as manipulators who rely on African collaborators. The real battle, therefore, is within Africa itself, between those who resist colonization in all its forms, and those who enable it for personal enrichment. Armah's message is one of active resistance, not just militarily, but intellectually, spiritually, and socially. The healers symbolize a nonviolent, long-term resistance rooted in education, awareness, and self-determination. 5. Education and transformation. Education is portrayed as a transformative process, but not in the Western sense. The healer's pedagogy is holistic. It includes bodily discipline, meditation, communal work, and deep historical awareness. Dentsu's education under Damfo is a rejection of colonial schooling in favor of an African-centric worldview. This theme aligns with Armah's larger literary project of cultural reclamation. By placing value on African epistemologies and pedagogies, he affirms the intellectual sovereignty of the continent. 6. Role of youth and future. Young people like Dentsu are central to the healer movement, representing hope for renewal. The novel insists that change must come from youth who are willing to unlearn inherited prejudices and internalized oppression. This emphasis on generational change aligns with Armah's call for a new kind of African leadership, rooted in ethics, wisdom, and communal responsibility. Symbolism. Healers. They are the custodians of African wisdom and unity. Symbolically, they stand for the continent's potential to recover from its internal and external wounds. Water and nature. These motifs often accompany scenes of healing and meditation, symbolizing purity, balance, and life force. The forest. Both a literal refuge and a symbolic space for transformation, it serves as a place where Dentsu is reborn with a new consciousness. Weapons versus medicine. The dichotomy between violence, represented by war and political power, and healing, represented by the healers, underscores the novel's rejection of domination in favor of nurturing. Narrative style. Armah uses a third-person omniscient narrator, often lyrical and philosophical in tone. The prose is rich with African oral traditions, mythological references, and meditative rhythms. The narrative style reflects the worldview of the healers, circular, holistic, and grounded in African cosmology. Unlike Armah's earlier novels, The Beautiful Ones Are Not Yet Born, The Healers is more optimistic, offering a vision of hope rooted in African values rather than existential despair. Conclusion: The Healers is a deeply political, philosophical, and spiritual novel that seeks to reclaim African history from colonial distortion. Through Dentsu's transformation and the teachings of the Healers, Armah crafts a powerful vision of unity, resistance, and moral awakening. The novel emphasizes that Africa's wounds, many of which are self-inflicted through division and betrayal, can be healed only through collective effort, ethical leadership, and a return to indigenous values. Far from being a historical relic, The Healers remains profoundly relevant, speaking to the ongoing struggles within African nations today, against corruption, identity crises, and neo-colonial entrapment. Armah's call is clear. Healing begins with self-awareness, unity, and a commitment to truth.